Hey, folks, I wanted to come to you today to share with you why your understanding of physics is wrong. Well, Newtonian physics makes us feel like we are just in a group of billiard balls that once one smacks, it smacks into the other, which smacks into the other, which smacks into the other. But in fact, we're all completely interconnected. When we change ourselves, start influencing the world in ways that we had n- no idea was even happening. Why do you think George Washington and Abraham Lincoln were able to do what they did, and they were uneducated? They didn't have a formal education. Who did Jesus surround himself with? Scholars? No, fishermen, women who were didn't even know how to read, as uneducated as you could come, and yet they didn't know that they couldn't do the miracles that they performed, so they did them. And Lao Tzu, right, in the Tao, talks about presumption is a disease. When we think that we know how the world works, well, then we're only looking for it in a very specific manner and in a very specific lane. But if the solution to our problems comes from over here and not in this lane, well, we'll never see it because we're hyper focused on our presumption. And then we're constantly let down. We feel like a fraud, like the world is out to get us because what we know to be true doesn't pan out. And yet our books tell us that it's true. Well, why does theoretical physics prove the existence of 11 dimensions if you include time? We already know that there's plenty out there that we can't quantify, and yet it works anyway. Newtonian physicists will just discard quantum physics. Oh, I don't understand that, so we don't need to pay attention to it. It's like, are you absurd? I mean, how crazy is that? I don't understand this math, so I don't need to worry about that. Well, look, there's a reason why Sadhguru says life is about experience, isn't it? Because when you experience something, that's when you can tell for yourself whether it's real or not. And you know what happens when you change yourself through that experience? Well, you find that you change the world. Why was Socrates known as the wisest man in the land? Because he knew that he didn't know. And when you know that you don't know, well, then you're actually open to real resolutions and the solving of problems that you didn't know was impossible. So it became possible. Dr. Andrew Weil talks about how we should be chasing the placebo effect, not dismissing it. Same thing. The quantum realm that we don't understand. You know that placebo and our antidepressant medicines? Yeah, find any published evidence that there's any SSRIs, any anti-anxiety that works better than 2% over a placebo. And then on top of that, anti-anxiety, well, then often you have to have an antipsychotic on top of that. Because we pretend that our bodies are Newtonian. We pretend that if there's one variable that we understand that seems to not be working, well, let's just address that one variable. And of course, everything else will fall into play. But what about all the interconnectedness of the rest of the body's function tied to that one thing? What sort of cascading effects? Well, anyone who's ever been on an anti-anxiety med, SSRI, has probably felt their libido get shot to shit. Not to mention, like I said, an antipsychotic on top of that. So yeah, We don't understand shit, which is why, what, at some point in your life, you're expected to get cancer. That just wasn't the case. In 1970s, you look at a beach, everyone's skinny. But now look at how great and smart we are, and we're all fat and miserable and sick and all walking around like, hey, good thing I know. Good thing I know while I'm sick and wasting away. When you let go of the need to know, that is the beginning of wisdom.